Hey guys! Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. You're going to wander barefoot, probably through the cluttered, scroll-littered corridors of Olympus, right behind the god of messages, lies, commerce, and lost sandals. Hermes himself. You'll watch him juggle angry gods, misplaced divine memos, and one extremely cursed pastry invitation. The stars are out. Mount Olympus glows like a forgotten palace-shaped nightlight. And down in the divine mailroom, something is very, very wrong. Oh, and you probably won't survive this job. Honestly, being the messenger of the gods sounds glamorous until you're 5 scrolls deep into legal disputes between Apollo's choir and Poseidon's pet dolphin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sitting cross-legged on a polished cloud, not just any cloud. This one hovers directly beneath Hermes' favorite sorting desk. It smells like sandalwood, ozone, and was that roasted goat cheese. Above you, the god of swift things is hunched over his mail pouch. You watch him mumble, wings on his ankles twitching nervously. That definitely didn't go to Artemis, he whispers, holding up a scroll sealed with peacock feathers Hera's mark. And that, oh no, that one had a thunderbolt stamp and I gave it to Wait. Who did I give that to? It's one of those nights. See, the mail system on Olympus isn't what you'd call efficient. It's ancient, bound with beeswax, scented by olive oil, and deeply, deeply cursed. Most messages are handwritten on papyrus, rolled tightly, and sealed with custom divine wax because, of course, Zeus needs lightning-shaped seals. Of course! But here's the problem. Hermes has been multitasking. Between delivering mortal prayers, managing divine trademarks. Yes, Nike's logo was originally his idea, and hiding forbidden satyr poetry under his helmet, he's slipped. Memos have gone to the wrong gods. And not just once. We're talking dozens, maybe hundreds of scrolls, letters, marriage requests, breakup notices, divine petitions, war declarations, birthday RSVPs, and poetry drafts sent to completely the wrong recipients. Tonight, he opens his satchel to find a return-to-sender pile the size of a napping minotaur. And the Olympians, they are not amused. That historical fact for you. In actual Greek cult worship, Hermes was often invoked for not just travel and communication, but for protecting merchants from being conned. Which is ironic, given what's about to happen. As you drift closer, floating slightly above the parchment mess, Hermes catches a whiff of panic. Okay, he says, hopping from cloud to cloud. Maybe if I just don't tell anyone. Historians still argue whether Hermes was ever officially reprimanded by Zeus for dereliction of postal duty, but tonight, it's about to become legend. He grabs a scroll. It's sticky, smells like roses and singed goat hair, a message meant for Ares. But you just watched him give it to Aphrodite yesterday. You don't know ancient Greek. But you do recognize the word attack. That can't be good. You trail Hermes as he zips toward a cloud balcony, where the gods gather for their bi-monthly thunder and tapas night. He's sweating. Gods aren't supposed to sweat. That's a mortal problem. But Hermes, he's always been somewhere in between. He lands. He coughs. He pretends he's there for the shrimp. Hera eyes him. Did you deliver my message to Athena? Hermes nods too fast. And my updated message about not using goat entrails in the welcome garlands. Hermes freezes. Updated. Updated. Hera says, arms crossed, the scent of peacock feathers thick in the air. Oops, you, invisible and drowsy, drift past a golden harp that's playing itself nearby. The gods are gathering. Plates of fig-stuffed olives float on trays made of stardust. Hephaestus is laughing at a forge-related pun no one else heard, and Hermes is dying inside. Then it happens. Zeus storms in. No thunder this time, just silence, which is worse. His toga is slightly scorched. His beard is curling in all the wrong directions. Hermes. Yes, Lord all-seeing sky slinger. Did you? Zeus says slowly, send me a scented love scroll signed by Demeter. Hermes blinks. You blink because Demeter is currently chewing on a fennel stalk across the room and has not smiled in 4 centuries. Because I nearly flooded Thessaly trying to impress her with a thunder-themed sonnet, Zeus continues, voice low and dangerous, which I now realize was meant for Persephone's mortal gardener. It's going to be a long night, and it's just getting started. You trail after Hermes, who is now pretending to be a passing nymph. His hat magically grows daisies. It doesn't work. Another god approaches, Apollo, with glitter in his hair and a lute strapped diagonally across his back. Tell me, wing feet. Apollo hums. Why did I receive a tax warning addressed to Dionysus? I was mid-owed. Now I owe 6 amphorae of mead and a goat I don't even own. Hermes gulps. Festival accounting error. Apollo leans in. Fix it, or I'll compose a ballad about your organizational skills. You drift behind them like a sleepy shadow, already starting to feel the rhythm of things. Mistake, confrontation, threat, mild food-related punishment. Repeat. And this was just the beginning of Hermes' most exhausting week. You trail Hermes like a particularly nosy breeze as he skids into the back corridors of Olympus, clutching his satchel like it's full of highly perishable olives, which, to be fair, it partially is. It's where he stores his emergency snacks. And one cursed stamp pad. Here's the thing. Divine bureaucracy is real. You've always suspected it. Deep down, you can't run an immortal empire of capricious deities without forms, wax seals, and about 1,000,000 urgent scrolls that no one reads until it's far too late. Hermes slams the satchel onto a marble desk in the male atrium, a high-ceilinged, echo-heavy chamber stacked floor to dome with pigeonholes, scroll tubes, unclaimed mortal petitions, and what appears to be a crumbling IOU from Prometheus dated before fire. He takes a deep breath and unrolls the first scroll. It's sticky. He frowns. Love letter, he mutters, sniffing it. Rose petal ink. Definitely meant for Aphrodite. So why? You lean over his shoulder ghost-like. Of course, no mortal should ever be this close to celestial gossip and read the opening line. To Ares, my hammer-fisted passion fruit. Hermes closes his eyes. He handed this to Hera. Somewhere out on the balcony, a peacock lets out a very accusatory squawk. He quickly flips through the pile. Every scroll seems to have the wrong recipient scrawled on the wax seal. There's a letter to Poseidon about a spa renovation sent to Hades. A contract intended for Athena is covered in Dionysian grape juice stains. Even worse, someone named Jerry keeps getting invitations to Olympus and no one knows who Jerry is. For your mainstream historical fact tonight, real ancient Greek messengers did exist. Hemerodromoi, or day runners, were trained couriers who could travel incredible distances on foot to deliver state messages. Hermes may be divine, but even he seems to be running on empty. Somewhere near the middle of the scroll stack, Hermes finds one addressed to Hera, with a small doodle of a swan, and a date, and hearts. He doesn't open it. He doesn't have to. This one's from Zeus, meant for Leda, probably, definitely not for Hera. He whispers, oh no, oh no, no, no. That letter went out last week. You sense the air around Olympus has subtly changed. The clouds are thickening. Thunder is grumbling like a hungry god with a gluten allergy. This is more than a few mixed-up messages. This is a full-blown postal catastrophe. Hermes slaps his cheeks lightly, takes a bite of emergency feta, and mutters, okay, damage control. Step 1. Find the worst letter. Step 2. Fix the least worst ones. Step 3. Invent time travel. He pulls out a scroll with Aphrodite's lipstick seal. That one, he knows, went to the wrong person. And yep, the wax has been scratched and replaced with Ares' war horn symbol. Oh no, he says again, and you begin to wonder if that's going to be the chorus of the evening. He lays them out like ancient playing cards across a scroll-sorting marble slab. The table has minor scorch marks, and what appears to be a faint stain from Persephone's winter plum cordial, a flavor that apparently never comes out. You drift over the letters with him. A thank you note to Hestia, accidentally given to Artemis. A legal summons meant for Hades. Now in Apollo's hands, he thought it was a fan letter. A festival schedule redirected so that Demeter showed up to an orgy, and Dionysus ended up harvesting turnips in silence. Historians still argue whether these mix-ups ever appeared in any of the classic epics, But as of tonight, you're living through the scroll disaster of the age. Fringe tidbit for this section. According to obscure Athenian temple rituals, some messengers used live snakes as letter guards, trained to slither back to their sender if intercepted. Hermes has considered this. He's just not sure who would clean up after them. As you and Hermes stare at the mounting chaos, a sudden realization strikes him. The worst letter. The very worst hasn't come back yet, which means it was read, and worse possibly believed. He checks the pouch. A single scroll is missing. Thin, red string tie, labeled in a rush with 4 Aries, except he remembers clearly. He gave it to Aphrodite, and Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, flirtation, and inconvenient passion, is not known for calmly verifying sender authenticity. You hover uneasily as Hermes clutches the mailbag tighter, turning slowly like he's about to throw it off the nearest cloud cliff and disappear to the mortal realm. Okay, he says, pacing. Okay, I can fix this. I just need. He freezes mid-sentence, because right then, Artemis walks past the atrium. She's wearing a full suit of goat-hide armor and carrying a ceremonial wrestling belt. She stops, looks at Hermes. Did you deliver my message to Athena? Hermes, caught off guard, nods. Of course. She narrows her eyes. Then why? She says slowly. Am I registered as a participant in the Pan-Arcadian Wrestling Championship for non-magical goats? He looks at her. Symbolism. She throws the belt at him. It lands with a heavy thud on the marble, right next to a scroll marked Official Invitation to Artemis's Sacred Bake Sale. A scroll Hermes had definitely handed to Poseidon by mistake. You both look down at it. Oh no, you whisper with him this time. You follow Hermes, now visibly unraveling like a toga caught in a laurel bush, as he speed walks, not flies, across Olympus. It's a small but telling detail. Flying is for confident gods. Walking quickly is for those who know they've royally messed up. You glide behind him into the north courtyard where polished marble meets an actual celestial meadow, the kind of place where nymphs gossip and satyrs overwater sacred begonias. And there, under a myrtle tree blooming slightly out of season, is Aphrodite. She's lounging, of course, reclined on a bench made from the size of admirers or maybe just really polished shell. Around her, scented doves coo in synchronized harmony, and a small pool reflects the perfect angle of her cheekbone. You feel slightly underdressed just floating nearby. Hermes stops. You can hear his internal monologue. Do not panic. Do not mention the war scroll. Do not compliment her hair. She'll know something's up. Wait, do compliment her hair? Hey, Aphrodite, he says, voice cracking only twice. She opens one eye, unbothered, and smiles. Hermes, darling, I've been expecting you. He freezes. Oh, she sits up slowly, her hair cascading like a sponsored shampoo ad. Yes, I wanted to thank you for that lovely letter. Hermes swallows. Which? A letter. The one where Ares declared undying loyalty to me, she says, dreamily twirling a curl, and promised to abandon battle for love. He even wrote a poem about swans. Hermes goes pale, which is hard to do when you're mostly made of gold and charisma. That's amazing. He manages, so he didn't threaten the 12-city coalition like he was planning. Aphrodite blinks. What? Hermes coughs into his elbow. Nothing. Nothing at all. You drift sideways, heart starting to beat in shared embarrassment. Here's the problem. The scroll she received wasn't from Ares. It was a military dispatch, one Hermes had scribbled urgent on and meant to deliver to the god of war himself. It opened with something like, your demands are clear. Launch the attack at dawn. No survivors, except in Aphrodite's hands. She interpreted it as passionate metaphor. Launch the attack became, take me by storm. No survivors became, well, let's just say it was flattering. And she had responded, with gifts and subtle divine flirting. The war, by the way, delayed. Eris is now confused and slightly weepy. He was prepping catapults. Now he's shopping for perfume. Mainstream, historical fact here. Aphrodite was often entangled in misunderstandings. In various myths, she caused the Trojan War, married one god Hephaestus, seduced another Ares, and convinced a mortal judge to crown her fairest with a literal apple. She's no stranger to emotional chaos. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Greek couriers sometimes marked letters with oil-based scents to match the sender's personality. Hermes, ever the innovator, used this trick for divine male rose oil for Aphrodite, brine for Poseidon, and, well, thunder smoke for Zeus. Today, that might have backfired. Anyway, Aphrodite hums, standing gracefully. I just wanted to say thank you. You're the only one who understands me. Hermes laughs nervously. Ha! Yeah, that's what I do. She leans in and kisses his cheek. Tell Ares I accept. Wholeheartedly. He nods, trying not to die. She walks off with doves trailing behind her, perfume heavy in the air. Somewhere nearby, a harp plays itself into a minor key. Hermes collapses onto the bench, the one made from stardust or heartbreak or something equally poetic. You drift close. His head is in his hands. This is worse than the time I misdelivered Hades' anniversary scroll to a temple priest. That ended with 3 plagues and a 2-year silence from Persephone. And now, Ares thinks he's in love. Aphrodite thinks he's renounced war. Zeus is humiliated. Artemis is furious. Hera's plotting. And Athena hasn't even received her correct letter yet. Hermes looks up and mutters, I need a miracle. Right then, thunder cracks in the distance. He jumps, or maybe not, but it's not Zeus. It's a voice. Deep, growling, slightly nasal. It's Ares. You spin slowly. Through the misty olive grove struts, the god of war himself. Shirtless, of course, dragging a bronze spear across the ground like he's etching new commandments into Olympus. Aphrodite won't return my letters, he growls. She just keeps sending me fruit baskets. Hermes smiles awkwardly. That's romantic. They have ribbons. Ares sneers. You know what a ribbon says. I surrender. You might not know divine politics, but you do know Ares hasn't surrendered anything since 1143 BCE. Maybe she's interpreting your tone? Hermes says carefully. Letters can be tricky. Ares squints. Did you mix them up? Hermes blinks. No! Ares steps forward. Hermes gulps. Okay, maybe yes, but only slightly. You both flinch as Ares hurls his spear right into a tree. It explodes into flaming pomegranate pulp. Fix. Yeah. Hermes nods. Right, will do. Absolutely. On it. You float backward as Ares stalks off. Muttering about lemon peels and stolen valor, Hermes sits back down and exhales. So, Aphrodite's swooning. Ares is fuming. And somewhere, Demeter is probably preparing to burn an orchard in protest of receiving another wrong notice. The scrolls aren't just misdelivered. They've reshaped divine intentions. Love has been mistaken for war. War has been rewritten as courtship. And somewhere, the god of messengers realizes he might have unintentionally canceled an entire siege in favor of a poetry reading. He opens the next scroll in the pile. It's labeled, For Zeus. Inside, a detailed weather schedule with a note. Cloud coverage for this weekend's wrestling match. Include extra fog near Delphi. He flips it over. On the back, a single lipstick kiss print. Hermes sighs, stuffing it into a pocket. He's going to need backup. You follow Hermes as he moves with all the grace of someone about to fake their own death and flee to Sicily. It's now officially too late to hide the disaster. The scroll mix-ups have reached a boiling point, and several gods are preparing, in typical overdramatic fashion, to take action. Divine action, which usually means something explodes, floods, or turns into a musical. Hermes' sandals flap in anxious rhythm as he storms back into the Sky Records room, a round dome lit only by glowing orbs of old correspondence. The air crackles faintly, scented with old ink, lightning residue, and divine resentment. He pulls open a scroll labeled Thunder Memo. Read immediately. It's the one he gave to Zeus 3 days ago, meant for Poseidon. Oops. Inside is a polite but firm notification about rising water levels along the Aegean coast, suggesting rainfall be minimized to avoid mortal confusion. But Zeus, thinking it was a forecast, had ramped up cloud production and hurled lightning indiscriminately across Thessaly. Farmers now refer to it as the week the sky was loud and moist. That scroll, still damp, Hermes reads it again and groans. No wonder the donkeys started hiding. A loud pop interrupts him. It's a minor god of weather Cirrus. Maybe. Hovering at the door with a nervous grin. Hi. Zeus wants to know why there are cumulonimbus over Delphi. He's currently stuck in a toga that's static charged and threatening to start a small fire. Hermes nods like a man who has accepted that he'll be turned into a decorative salamander statue any moment now. Tell him. It's an interpretive weather installation. Hermes says flatly, right. The cloud god says, I'll make something up. As Cirrus drifts away, you float behind Hermes, who slumps into a scroll chair shaped like a sleeping owl. Why did I ever agree to be the messenger? He asks the ceiling. I could have run a sandal shop or become a trickster consultant. Do you know how many mortals need help faking death properly? Mainstream historical fact. Hermes was one of the most worshipped deities in ancient Greece, especially among travelers, merchants, and orators. People looked to him for guidance through dangerous terrain, physical and metaphorical. Fringe tidbit. There's a lesser-known myth that Hermes once tried to create a magical pigeon courier system. It failed after the birds unionized. Honestly, that's feeling more and more plausible right now. You feel the wind shift, not metaphorically, literally. A heavy boot step echoes through the dome. It's Zeus, and he's not alone. Behind him stands Hera, arms crossed like she's preparing to sue Olympus. Her peacocks follow in silence, judgment in their iridescent eyes. Lightning buzzes faintly from Zeus's fingertips. His toga is indeed sparking at the seams. Hermes rises. He tries a smile. Great weather today. Huh. Zeus glares. Hermes, care to explain why I received a love letter from Demeter? Hermes freezes. Oh, that wasn't for you. No. Hera cuts in coldly. It wasn't. And yet, he stood on our balcony for 2 hours, reading it aloud like it was a sacred vow. Zeus winces. There were metaphors. It included a pie recipe. Zeus. Hermes begins to sweat. You hover just slightly behind him. Morally supportive. Entirely invisible. Hera steps closer. And why did Athena receive a diagram of goat wrestling techniques? Hermes coughs. Misfiled. She's preparing a seminar. Zeus roars. But the kind of roar that's quieter than thunder and infinitely more dangerous. I nearly flooded a mortal province trying to impress Demeter. He says, voice low, I reversed a monsoon just to conjure a lightning heart shape over her barley fields. And now she's started a crusade against olive oil. She thinks it causes distractions. Hera adds, and is promoting grain-forward intimacy. Whatever that means, Hermes wants to crawl into a scroll tube and vanish. Then, unexpectedly, Zeus sighs. He slumps onto a floating cloud stool and deflates. Maybe I needed the distraction, he mutters. Mortals are exhausting. Gods are worse. And Hera's still mad about the swan thing. I am always mad about the swan thing. She replies without looking at him. You blink. Is this divine vulnerability? Hermes slowly, very carefully, opens a new scroll meant for Hephaestus, a design memo for an automatic insult writing machine. He folds it closed and says nothing. Instead, he reaches into his satchel and pulls out a blank parchment. Then another. The gods stare. What are you doing? Zeus asks. Hermes takes a deep breath, fixing it. All of it. You hover in stunned admiration as the messenger god begins rewriting. By hand, apology scrolls, clarifications, corrected RSVP lists, a new weather schedule. He even writes one to Aphrodite. Dear goddess of love, please disregard any and all military metaphors you may have recently read. Sincerely, a regretful courier. He turns to Zeus. Do you want me to write a proper love letter to Demeter? Just from you this time. Zeus grumbles. Hera rolls her eyes but nods. Make it grain forward. She likes that now. You start to feel something shift in the air. Not forgiveness, but the possibility of it. Still, as Hermes rewrites messages into the night, you both know one thing for sure. Not every scroll can be taken back, especially the one he handed Athena last week, about hosting an experimental weapons symposium that was actually meant for Ares and Athena. She already sent invitations. You float beside Hermes, watching ink pool like nervous sweat on parchment as he scribbles one scroll after another. It's oddly peaceful in here now. The chaos hushed. just the scratch of his quill and the occasional divine sigh echoing off the dome's golden arches. It might almost feel redemptive, if not for the slight problem currently unfolding 3 levels above. Athena, goddess of wisdom and surprisingly aggressive conference planning, is setting up the Pan-Olympic Experimental Goat Wrestling and Weapons Innovation Symposium. Yeah, that's still happening. Hermes dips his quill into fresh ink, muttering, "Maybe she hasn't sent the battle drones yet." "Too late," says a voice from the shadows. You both jump. Out steps Artemis, holding a scroll that looks suspiciously like it's been set on fire, then rehydrated in deer milk, then rolled through glitter. "I just received this," she says, waving it. "An invitation to a bake sale." Hermes blinks. "I thought I gave that one to Hestia." Artemis raises an eyebrow. "Then, why is it signed by Poseidon and scented like seaweed?" You both stare at the scroll again. "Right," Hermes says softly. "That was supposed to be a truce offering to the River Council. I added lemon zest for diplomacy." Artemis squints. "And now, Poseidon thinks I'm challenging him to a culinary duel." You blink in awe. A culinary duel between the goddess of the hunt and the god of tsunamis. That's not dinner. It's disaster souffle. Hermes rubs his temples. Okay. What's done is done. I'll just send them both a recipe and hope for the best." You drift away from the drama momentarily. Hovering above the city of Olympus itself, the white stone glows faintly with starlight. You can just barely hear the muttering of nymphs, dryads, and one very confused satyr trying to sell cursed honey spoons. The mood is twitchy. All across Olympus, misdelivered scrolls are still doing their damage. In one corner, Hephaestus is hammering together a complaint machine. A literal one, it's bronze, has 6 mouths, and every time a new grievance is inserted, it lets out a mechanical sigh and spits back a sarcastic rebuttal. "Why don't you forge your own destiny?" It snaps at Ares, who tosses a spear at it. It ducks. Hermes, trying to calm the situation, offers a replacement scroll to Hephaestus. "This one has your actual message," he says. "Design specs for the new underworld elevator." Hephaestus takes it, opens it. Why does it contain a recipe for fig tarts and an RSVP to Eternal Evening with Hades? Hermes shrinks. "I may have written that on both sides." Meanwhile, in the fields of gold, Demeter is marching barefoot across her grain empire, clutching a crumpled tax notice. It was meant for Persephone. It was not supposed to say, "Your fertility output has been insufficient. Please report to Dionysus for emotional realignment and seasonal sparkle realignment." She's furious. The wheat's trembling. Somewhere, olives are weeping softly. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Greek rituals often associated Demeter with extremely strict planting cycles. Missing a single lunar sign could mean a failed harvest. Now imagine how she feels reading a scroll that asks her to increase sparkle yield. Back in the dome, Hermes is panicking again. He flips through scrolls until one lands with a metallic clink. It's sealed in obsidian wax, marked with a stylized skull. "Oh no," he whispers. You lean in. It's the private underworld RSVP scroll, the one Hades personally commissioned for a small, extremely exclusive spa retreat strictly for those who have never cheated death or gossip. It went public. Someone, somewhere, has been passing it around like a party flyer. Hermes gulps. Because if Zeus gets hold of that scroll who is both allergic to being left out and terrible at relaxation, he'll crash the retreat, turn the steam room into a thunder pit, and call it improvised team building. And guess what? From outside the dome, a voice booms, "Hermes, what's this? I hear about a hot spring party in Tartarus." Hermes screams internally. Mainstream historical fact. In actual Greco-Roman mythology, Hades was considered a relatively calm, reasonable god, as long as you respected the boundaries of his domain. He disliked surprise guests, or anyone who treated his kingdom like a vacation rental. Frantic now, Hermes darts past you and into the central archive. Scrolls spin around him like frantic paper birds. You chase him, trying not to float too fast through a stack of love letters bound in laurel twine. He finally grabs one sealed in red ink. "This one," he gasps. "This is the real schedule. This is what I was supposed to send to everyone. The one scroll to end the chaos." You peer over his shoulder. It's a calendar, a divine itinerary. carefully handwritten, neatly color-coded, and titled Weekly Duties, Oaths, and Assigned Thunder Days. Hermes looks at it like it's a sacred relic, then frowns, because the final line reads, "And remember, no food fights during mortal eclipses. We're still on thin cosmic ice." He sighs. Too late for that. He presses the scroll to his forehead. All right, he breathes. Time to own this. And you realize, drifting beside him in the shadow of divine confusion, that he's not going to run. Nope. He's going to do the unthinkable. He's going to invite all the gods to one place, at the same time, to explain everything. You float there in horror, because that is how Olympus burned down once. You hover just above Hermes as he stands in the open courtyard of Olympus, scroll clutched tightly in his ink-stained fingers, his winged sandals twitching with nervous electricity. The stars above have that faint shimmer of cosmic disapproval. Around him, wind stirs fallen petals, and the vague scent of divine ozone like someone tried to perfume a lightning bolt and failed. The marble beneath his feet hums with ancestral drama. And somewhere in the distance, a chorus of minor gods is rehearsing a dissonant hymn about blame allocation. He's ready. Well, as ready as someone can be when they're about to summon the 12 most powerful beings in the cosmos for a full disclosure meeting. You can practically hear the old myths whispering, don't gather them all in one place. Don't serve hummus. Don't let Ares sit next to Dionysus. Hermes takes a breath. He raises the scroll, and then he lets it go. It floats into the air, bursts into soft golden flame, and the ashes swirl upward in a spiral dance, racing into the sky like tiny divine pigeons. Invitations, sent, irrevocable, and you, poor sleep-drowsy observer, are now officially front row for what will either be a celestial reconciliation or the loudest bake sale this side of Mount Etna. Moments pass. Then a shadow falls over the courtyard. First to arrive, Hera, regal, composed, and followed by peacocks that look like they've filed formal complaints against time itself. Next, Demeter, barefoot and furious, dragging behind her a cart of spoiled grain as evidence of some vaguely worded insult. Then comes Apollo, his lyre slung over one shoulder, already composing a passive-aggressive ballad titled The Courier's Catastrophe. Ares storms in, shirtless again. You suspect he has no shirts? Just capes and emotional tension. Athena descends silently, with scrolls tucked under each arm and a look that could turn olive oil sour. Dionysus saunters in last, sipping something questionable from a chalice shaped like a drama mask. Are we fighting? Debating. Mourning. Please let it be morning. He says, I brought plum wine. Even Poseidon is here, seaweed tangled in his beard, grumbling about his mistakenly reassigned mountain, and in the corner, already seated with suspicious calm, is Artemis, sharpening a bread knife. You don't ask. Mainstream, historical fact. The Greek pantheon was famously dysfunctional. Family drama was a key feature, not a bug. They didn't just rule the world. They micromanaged each other's grudges like full-time Olympian interns. Fringe tidbit. There's a little-known folktale that once, when all 12 Olympians were summoned to a single place, the earth itself groaned and tried to fake a landslide to get out of hosting. Can't say we blame it. Hermes clears his throat. Thank you all for coming. He begins, voice cracking like a badly tuned lyre. There's been a mix-up. All eyes land on him. It's like being stared at by a gallery of emotionally volatile statues. I may have very slightly misdelivered a few scrolls. Hera snorts. Demeter folds her arms. Dionysus raises his chalice and says, to chaos. Hermes pushes on. In response, I propose something new, something that lets us laugh about this, reflect, heal, possibly roast each other gently over snacks. You lean in. He's doing it. The plan. The Festival of Regrettable Correspondence. Hermes says, holding up a small scroll like it's a sacred treaty. A one-night event. We read the worst letters aloud. Clarify intentions. Burn the rest. Maybe eat something cursed but delicious. Silence. Ares mutters. Is there an arm wrestling round? Yes. Hermes lies. With frosting. Apollo perks up. I get to perform my letter to the wrong muse. Hermes nods. You get a spotlight. Athena raises a brow. And what of my goat wrestling symposium? We'll merge it. Hermes says quickly. Crossover theme. intellectual irony. You'll love it. Zeus finally floats down from above, delayed, as usual, by the burden of Thunderwear logistics. What's this I hear about a scroll bonfire and apology haikus? Hermes gives him a thin smile, an elegant solution. Zeus grunts. Do I get to yell? Hermes nods. Only once. Zeus shrugs. Fine. But I'm sitting next to the olives this time. You're stunned. Somehow, it's working. One by one, the gods reluctantly nod. They've been handed love letters meant for enemies, tax scrolls intended for pets, weather reports that triggered diplomatic incidents. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to laugh at it all. They don't forgive him. Not yet, but they agree to attend. That's something. That's enough. You glide upward into the sky, watching from above as Hermes begins assigning roles. Hestia will host, Dionysus will cater, Hephaestus will build a rotating scroll display contraption with mildly dramatic flame effects. It will be the first time in centuries the gods gather for something other than vengeance. Still, there is one scroll Hermes hasn't found yet. The one Athena received, the one that launched a symposium none of them can quite cancel. And that, dear sleeper, is a problem for another night. You drift down gently as Hermes, clipboard now in hand. Where did he get a clipboard? Paces a smooth obsidian path outlining the festival grounds. Preparations are underway, and Olympus is transforming into something strange and chaotic and mildly ceremonial. In short, very Hermes. The festival of regrettable correspondence is now official. He's commandeered the courtyard of celestial announcements, a flat amphitheater usually reserved for declarations of war, eternal punishments, and the occasional divine talent show. Tonight, it's filled with mismatched couches, scroll-shaped snack platters, and a massive bonfire pit made of old chariot wheels and unused lightning rods. Gods don't do casual events. Even their mistakes get a festival. You hover beside Hermes as he supervises Hephaestus, who is welding together a contraption that looks like a rotating scroll display crossed with a popcorn machine. It emits the occasional spark and, for some reason, a rooster's crow. This will project each letter mid-air, Hephaestus explains, smudged with soot and pride, and then combust it in controlled shame flames. Hermes nods solemnly. Perfect. Just don't aim the flames at the olive bar. Over by the garden, Dionysus is mixing cocktails named after specific blunders. The misfired muse contains too much pomegranate and regret. The scroll, burnt twice, is served warm and aggressively apologetic. He's wearing a tunic stitched from rejection letters. Ares lounges at the dueling table, sharpening apology swords small, decorative blades dipped in frosting. No point in regrets without a little stabbing, he says cheerfully. Meanwhile, Hestia blesses the fire pit with murmured words and a cinnamon stick. Hermes, clipboard still shaking slightly, double-checks everything. All right, he mutters. We've got wine. Regrets. A burning mechanism, just missing one thing. A voice cuts through the courtyard. Am I late? You both turn. It's Athena, and she's holding a guest list. Mainstream historical fact. In most traditions, Athena was the goddess of wisdom, but also strategy, warfare, and administration. She didn't just fight, she planned, documented, and debriefed it afterward. If anyone was going to turn this festival into a lesson plan, it's her. Not late, Hermes says carefully, just profoundly early. Athena looks over the bonfire with clinical interest. This seems disorganized. That's the charm, he replies, trying not to sweat. I brought the symposium invitations, she says, unrolling a scroll that's at least 12 feet long. 12 gods, 18 guest speakers, 4 goat wrestling brackets, 2 breakout sessions on weapon ergonomics, and a closing lecture titled When Foresight Fails, a case study in male-driven chaos. He stares. I included you as keynote. His mouth opens, closes. You, what? I assumed you'd want to address the causes of divine miscommunication. She tilts her head. Unless your ego is too scorched, you're not sure if it's sarcasm or encouragement. Possibly both. Hermes sighs. Fine, I'll keynote, but only if I can wear the cape that says, do not shoot the messenger. Athena nods. It's already printed. You blink. This symposium is real. It's attached to the festival now, like a philosophical barnacle. Gods begin filtering into the courtyard. Apollo arrives with a backup lyre. Poseidon brings salted figs and a reluctant sea lion. Even Hades shows up, wearing shades and muttering about exposure therapy. Hermes takes center stage. He clears his throat. Friends, rivals, legally distant cousins, welcome. The gods look up. He raises a scroll. Tonight, we confront our shared shame. A polite clap from Hestia, a sarcastic one from Artemis. He continues, we will now take turns reading our most unfortunate miscommunications aloud, and then feeding them to the bonfire. Apollo steps forward first. He opens a scroll and sighs, to the mortal poet Timocles, please stop writing about your goat. It's not epic. It's weird. Apollo. He crumples it, tosses it into the fire. It burns with a brief chorus of Ode to Bessie. Dionysus follows. His scroll is sticky to Demeter. Please stop sending passive-aggressive harvest baskets. Wine isn't bread. The fire flashes pink. Demeter lifts a brow but says nothing. Zeus steps up with a half-burnt scroll. This was meant for Hera. It contains lines I thought were poetic. Hera sighs. He reads, monotone. Your beauty is a lightning rod of my soul. Signed, your swanderful husband. The bonfire crackles louder than usual. You float back, half laughing, half mesmerized. They're really doing it, reading their worst messages aloud, offering them to the flames. It's a kind of divine therapy. Loud, chaotic, possibly illegal under celestial protocol. Fringe tidbit. Some ancient oracles believed that written regrets, when burned at night, could influence the dreams of sleeping gods. You're not saying that's what Hermes planned, but you wouldn't put it past him. Hermes himself steps up last. He unrolls a scroll. Blank. This one, he says, was never written. It's the apology I meant to give before any of this started. He stares into the fire. I'm sorry I didn't check the seals. I'm sorry Aphrodite got a war memo. I'm sorry Zeus wrote a poem. I'm sorry for whatever happened to the olives. He throws the blank scroll into the fire. It bursts into gold. The crowd murmurs. Not quite applause, but something close. And above them, stars seem a little brighter. You hover in silence, feeling the moment. One by one, the gods begin mingling again, eating cursed desserts, throwing scroll ash into the wind. Hermes leans back on a scroll-shaped bench and exhales. Not bad, he says. You drift beside him, and for the first time in days, he looks at peace, but then he frowns. Wait, where's the scroll I gave Hades? You follow Hermes as he straightens up from his scroll-shaped bench, his brow furrowed in sudden memory. Hades, he mutters, the scroll, the private scroll, around you. The festival of regrettable correspondence winds down in bursts of laughter and lingering awkwardness. Apollo is serenading a fig tree. Dionysus is asleep in a wine barrel. Artemis is watching everyone with the air of a substitute teacher who knows the kids have glued her chair to the floor. But Hermes, he's wide awake now, because he just remembered what was written in that scroll. To Hades, he mutters, regarding spa logistics, underworld guest list clearance, and oh no ambrosia restrictions. You watch the color drain from his face. That wasn't just a thank you note. That was the confidential itinerary for a very exclusive, invitation-only event in the most private of divine spaces. The kind of event where no one's allowed to mention their titles, or where Persephone insists everyone wear linen, and the only background music permitted is harp covers of funereal laments. And if that scroll got mishandled, Hermes spins around. Where's Hades? You follow him through the courtyard, past the smoking remains of the scroll pyre and the leftover plates of ash-crusted goat cheese truffles. The crowd is thinning. Gods are teleporting away in elegant flashes. Nymphs are collecting stray sandals. One satyr is still trying to auction off a love letter from Aphrodite that's probably just a wine-stained menu. But no sign of Hades. Hermes checks under the floating snack table, which is somehow still emitting lavender mist. Nothing. He mutters, maybe he left early, or maybe a hand lands on his shoulder. He jumps. It's Hades, tall, pale, and quietly theatrical, like an undertaker who moonlights as a poetry critic. His robes are deep black with silver trim, and the smell of cool stone and mineral water follows him like a reluctant chaperone. You were looking for me, he says softly. Hermes spins. Yes. So glad you're still here. Listen, I just wanted to check that the scroll I gave you was the correct one. The one about the retreat. The spa rules. Hades tilts his head. You mean the one that was accidentally delivered to Hera and then passed around like party gossip for 3 days? Hermes swallows. So you heard. Hades smiles without warmth. I hosted the event yesterday. You blink. Hermes blinks. Wait. Hermes says, you went through with it. I had no choice. Hades replies. Aphrodite showed up wearing sandals that said, hot stuff below. Dionysus brought a goat and said it was his emotional support therapist. He sighs. Ares cannonballed into the sulfur pool. Artemis judged everyone's towel etiquette. And Zeus wouldn't stop adjusting the temperature of the steam room every 5 seconds. Hermes covers his face. I'm so sorry. Hades raises a finger. However, you both freeze. It was, he continues, surprisingly peaceful. You look at him. He's serious. No one died. Hades explains. No one turned into a flower. Persephone made scones. We discussed boundaries. For once, the underworld felt light. Hermes stares. Really? Really? Hades nods. Though next time, please do not include Poseidon on the guest list. He brought oysters. Live oysters. Hermes laughs weakly. Duly noted. Mainstream historical fact. In classical Greek culture, the underworld wasn't just a place of punishment. It was a structured, balanced domain with its own etiquette, ruled by a god who, unlike his brothers, rarely meddled above ground. Hades was many things, but he was consistent. Fringe tidbit. Some versions of Orphic texts suggest that Hades held seasonal retreats for minor deities, opportunities for rest, restoration, and reorganizing the spiritual filing system. Few were ever invited. Fewer returned with the same hairstyle. Hermes exhales, relieved. So, no grudges. Hades considers it, no new grudges. They shake hands. You float backward, taking in the slow dissolution of the festival. The air is lighter now. The bonfire has died down to soft glowing embers, whispering stories only the smoke remembers. A few final scrolls are being burned in quiet ceremony. One is a grocery list from Hera labeled, "Do not let Zeus near the olives again." Hephaestus shuts down the scroll machine. It lets out a final, sassy huff. Athena unrolls the first draft of her post-festival report. Dionysus has already forgotten where he is. Hermes walks slowly back to the center of the courtyard. Alone now, exhausted, he looks up at the stars. The wind tugs gently at his cloak. You drift beside him as he sits once more on the scroll-shaped bench and opens the very last parchment in his satchel, the emergency one. The one labeled, "In case of absolute collapse." Read this. It's blank. Of course it is. Because the god of messengers never really writes down what matters most. He smiles. You close your eyes, just for a moment, lulled by the last crackle of the dying scroll fire, the faint music of harp strings, and a gentle voice whispering something only dreams understand. You made it through the day. You wake, no. Drift back into the story as Hermes tiptoes across the now quiet remains of the festival grounds. The stars above Olympus have softened into little candlelit freckles, barely pulsing. Even time seems unsure whether to keep moving or just let everyone nap. But there's one last obligation before he can rest. A scroll, one that slipped behind a cloud bench during the chaos. Hermes notices it now, catching a faint glint of starlight reflecting off its silver ribbon. He bends down, picks it up, brushes off a suspicious bit of frosting, and checks the seal. It's Athena's, not from her to her, and it's unopened. He stares at it, confused, because he remembers clearly giving her a scroll. In fact, that scroll supposedly launched her entire symposium planning spree. But if this one never reached her, then what did she read? Hermes opens the ribbon and carefully unfurls the parchment. It's a memo, a perfectly boring, meticulously polite note regarding a budget adjustment for owl-shaped quills and updated security for mortal oracle sites. It contains 0 references to goat wrestling. None, not even a pun. Hermes slowly looks up, wide-eyed. Oh no, you can practically see the little lightning bolt of realization shoot from his forehead straight into the heavens. If this was the original scroll, then Athena never actually received the real one. So what did she base her symposium on? And then you remember, one scroll, early in the disaster, had been labeled for Ares, a list of proposed battle games, including goat-based combat scenarios, javelin poetry, and a suspicious line about testing long-range olive launches for wartime morale. Hermes had handed that scroll to Athena, and she, being Athena, read it with perfect seriousness, logged it into her brain as policy, and executed a plan with military precision. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient temples of Athena did host war-themed festivals like the Panathenaic Games, featuring both athletic and intellectual challenges. She loved structure, logic, strategy, fringe tidbit. There exists one minor fragment of a lost comedy by Aristophanes, where the gods organize a goat-themed competition and forget why halfway through. Athena wins by quoting herself. Hermes sinks onto a fallen scroll barrel. I told her to prepare for a symposium on morale training through absurdity. You float beside him. Silent, she created an entire academic panel. You both glance toward the distant Acropolis where Athena is likely right now organizing name tags, projection crystals, and schedule charts for a 4-day symposium built on a complete misfire. And it's not just happening, she's got RSVPs, panelists. One paper titled Combat via Hoof, a reconsideration of pre-Socratic tactics. Hermes mutters, she thinks it's a think tank. You nod sympathetically, then realize he's not breathing. He's thinking, plotting. You can always tell. He suddenly straightens up. Okay, I can work with this. You blink. You can. Oh, absolutely, he says, eyes sparkling with the dangerous optimism of someone about to put glitter on a thunderbolt. We rebrand it. Rebrand what? The symposium. We call it correspondence, a tactical miscommunication summit. You try to respond, but he's already pacing. We'll say the entire festival was an intentional case study, a stress test. We'll claim Athena commissioned me to mishandle the scrolls to see how divine relationships withstand information breakdown under pressure. You just stare at him. He nods, satisfied. We leak the rumor through Apollo's poetry night. Let Dionysus accidentally overhear. Then Hades confirms it retroactively. Pause, and we give Athena a special keynote titled Beyond Order, Finding Wisdom in Chaos. You float backward slowly, because if anyone can reverse engineer a disaster into a scholarship grant, it's Hermes. As if on cue, a minor breeze picks up and delivers a fresh scroll to his feet. He opens it cautiously. Inside, in neat script, are the words, Dear Hermes, I suspected. Of course I read the wrong scroll, but it was fascinating. See you at the panel. Bring your own goat, Athena. He stares at it, then bursts out laughing. Of course she knew. Of course she turned it into a controlled experiment. She's Athena. You laugh with him, softly, the way clouds laugh when they dodge lightning bolts. The festival may be over. The worst letters burned. But this scroll, this little note, it glows like a wink from the divine. Because in the end, the message wasn't wrong. It was just misunderstood. And maybe that's what being a messenger is really about. Not always getting it right, but making something good out of getting it wrong. Hermes folds the scroll, tucks it in his sleeve, and looks up. Let's go, he says. I've got a speech to write, and someone's got to design a symposium logo. You float beside him, lighter than stardust now, as he vanishes into the twilight. Behind you, a final scroll slips off a tree branch, unopened, labeled only. To Jerry, the air over Olympus is cooler now, the kind of quiet only found between divine catastrophes and their eventual documentation. You drift down alongside Hermes as he walks calmly this time toward Athena's summit, the so-called Correspondence Symposium, newly rebranded under false pretenses and divine spin. It's being held at the Central Dome of Disciplines, a colossal rotunda carved from wisdom itself, literally. The stone walls shimmer faintly with moving diagrams, and soft lectures whisper themselves into the architecture. It smells like scroll glue and ancient smugness. As you enter, it hits you. The symposium is packed. Gods, minor deities, muse representatives, confused mortals who wandered in by mistake. Even a cyclops is taking notes using a quill between two sausage-sized fingers. Hermes scans the crowd, a little breathless. There's a welcome banner. It reads, "Rethinking Mistakes, Divine Strategies for Postal Disruption." Sponsored by Athena. And accidentally, Hermes. You hover near the ceiling and take it all in. Apollo moderating the keynote panel in a toga made entirely of old lyric drafts. Demeter at the refreshments table, passing out sustainable grain-based snacks labeled guilt-free bites. Dionysus presenting a poster titled Wine Labels and Passive Aggression, a comparative study. Hermes steps behind the stage curtain. He's got 20 minutes before his speech, and one tiny problem. He hasn't written it. Because how do you explain losing control of the entire divine communication network and accidentally triggering both love confessions and international wheat boycotts? He grabs a scroll, blinks, it's blank. Again, a running theme. Apparently, he exhales, then begins to write mainstream historical fact. The ancient Greeks loved a public lecture. Sophists, philosophers, orators, they'd speak for hours. Debate was a form of art, entertainment, even flirtation. And Athena, she invented the syllabus. Fringe tidbit. There's a half-buried myth about a scroll day once a century when the gods publicly admit mistakes in riddle form and swap regrets disguised as wisdom. It might have been real or a prank by Hermes. Hard to say. Outside, the crowd settles. Athena steps to the podium. Her armor is polished. Her tone is crisp. Welcome, she begins. Today we explore how misdirected information, far from being destructive, may paradoxically reinforce order by unmasking assumptions and destabilizing false hierarchies. You pretend to understand that sentence. She gestures gracefully to a display of burnt scrolls behind her. What began as a clerical disaster, she continues, revealed patterns of power, preference, and neglect. We were forced to confront ourselves and each other. Some of us received truths we never asked for. Others, invitations to reflect. And one of us, she looks at Hermes, learned what happens when you assign goat wrestling to the goddess of wisdom. Polite laughter. Hermes smiles sheepishly. She steps aside. Our next speaker requires no introduction, though he'll give one anyway. The god of messages, of mistakes, of momentum. Hermes. The applause is surprisingly generous. Hermes walks slowly to the podium. You drift beside him. He unrolls the scroll, still blank, but he doesn't need it anymore. He clears his throat. "Hi," he says, voice echoing. "So, I lost your letters." A few chuckles. "I swapped declarations of war with perfume recipes, accidentally invited the god of storms to a spa, delivered a breakup note to someone who thought it was a marriage proposal, and in one case, just one. Mind you, I sent a grocery list to the Furies." Muffled gasps. "But something strange happened." He continues. "When the scrolls went wrong, you listened." He steps forward slightly. Zeus apologized with poetry. Artemis baked. Demeter hugged a fish. Athena wrote 12 policy proposals in 3 hours. And Aphrodite convinced Ares to talk about his feelings. Out loud, laughter now. Warmer. "The messages were wrong," he says, "but the reactions were real. And maybe that means the gods aren't just power and prophecy. Maybe we're improvisers, interpreters, translators of divine chaos into something personal." He pauses. "I didn't plan the festival, but I wouldn't unsend a single scroll, because without those mistakes, without the confusion and misinterpretation and ridiculous dessert-themed vengeance, none of you would have sat down together." He smiles. "And none of this would have happened." He nods toward the crowd, where Zeus is handing Hera a plate of olives without incident. Apollo is composing a sonnet about not knowing what's going on but enjoying it anyway. Athena's taking notes. Ares is eating a guilt-free fig and trying not to look like he enjoys it. Hermes steps back. "Thanks for reading what was never meant for you." The applause is thunderous. You drift down beside him as he exits stage right and collapses onto a bench made of unclaimed mailbags. "Not bad?" he whispers. "Still didn't mention the cursed scroll." You blink. "The what?" He points lazily toward the bottom of his satchel, a scroll, wrapped in velvet. No wax seal, just a whisper of something old and slightly sarcastic. "I never delivered it," he murmurs. He opens it. Inside, a single sentence. "You will fix this by failing to fix it." He stares, then shrugs. "Sounds about right." He crumples it, and tosses it in the fire urn beside the bench. It burns blue. You drift beside Hermes as he leans back on the bench, watching the remnants of the symposium settle into a soft afterglow. The crowd has thinned. Scrolls have been recycled into decorative coasters. Even Dionysus has switched from wine to herbal tea, which is probably a sign of the apocalypse. For once, Olympus feels tired, in a good way, like a party that didn't end in fire or lawsuits. But Hermes is still twitchy, because the scrolls might be burned. The gods momentarily placated, and the symposium successfully rebranded, but his satchel still heavy. He peers inside. "Oh no," he mutters. You follow his gaze. Dozens of unopened scrolls, returned mail, readdressed letters, a poetry contest submission that smells like wet wool, and at the very bottom, something worse than all of it, a scroll with multiple seals, all of them broken. This means it was read, reread, possibly photocopied, and then handed back. Hermes picks it up, unfolds it carefully, and stares. It's from Hera, and it's titled Suggestions for Postal Reform. 143 pages of constructive fury. He flips through the pages. Each section is numbered and footnoted. There are diagrams, color-coded insults, a section labeled Proper Distribution of Apologies with charts. You lean in over his shoulder, blinking at one entry. Item 36. All future scrolls to be delivered with built-in clarification tags to prevent misinterpretation. Suggested emojis. Olive branch, thundercloud, snake in a basket. Hermes groans softly. She's reinventing HR. Mainstream historical fact. The Greeks didn't have emojis, obviously, but ancient scribes did use symbols in margins to express tone. Things like birds, stars, or tiny amphorae to clarify mood. So yes, Hera might be onto something. Fringe tidbit. There's a temple inscription in southern Thessaly that contains what scholars believe to be the first recorded "sorry, not sorry" in hexameter. It was directed at Hermes. Of course, you float silently as Hermes sets the scroll down and massages his temples. He pulls out another scroll at random, this one tied with string shaped like a tiny musical note. "Apollo," he mutters. "Let's see what catastrophe this is." He unrolls it. Inside, a single sentence. "Dear Hermes, I've written a new musical inspired by your failures. I've cast you as a chorus of 3 overwhelmed birds. The soundtrack is mostly harpsichord." He flips the scroll around. On the back, a doodle of Hermes falling into a scroll machine labeled Panic with Rhythm. "Great," Hermes says. "Musical humiliation. Just what I needed." From nearby, a voice. "It's already been workshopped." Hermes turns. Apollo is leaning against a column, sipping something suspicious from a flask shaped like a crescent moon. I'm calling it Message in a Blunder. It's about trust. And falling downstairs in metaphorical sandals, Hermes forces a smile. "Love that." "Really?" Apollo winks. "You're going to be famous." Hermes sighs. You, floating beside him, sigh too, possibly in solidarity. Possibly because Apollo has started humming the overture and it's in 118 time. Hermes picks up another scroll. This one's unsigned. No wax seal, no name, just a message scrawled in jagged ink. "You were supposed to give me the prophecy, not a bakery menu." There's a small drawing of a frown and a loaf of bread. Hermes squints. Who even was that for? You peer over his shoulder. Then it clicks. The Oracle of Delphi. He sent her the sacred forecast scroll after mixing it up with Dionysus's seasonal wine-pairing dinner menu, meaning the Oracle has been reciting entirely incorrect prophecies for 3 days, probably while holding a pomegranate spritzer. "Oh no," Hermes breathes. "I've accidentally created a religion based on cake pairings." You can almost feel the cosmic misalignment ripple across the sky. Somewhere on Earth, a goat sneezes and a cult is born. Hermes leans back and stares into the distance. "I need a new satchel," he says at last, one with a "no accidental heresies" pocket. You drift with him as he wanders through the cooling air, returning to the festival grounds now quiet, peaceful, and lightly smoking. Ares left a fire pit still burning. Classic. In the ashes, a single scroll glows faintly. Hermes picks it up, expecting yet another disaster. But this one, it's blank, except for a note on the outside. "To the next messenger, you're going to mess everything up. That's the job. But if the messages make people feel something, anger, joy, awkwardness, then maybe it's okay." Don't give anything to Jerry. He's not real. The first courier, Hermes, reads it twice, then laughs, not the tired, panicked laugh from before, a real one. You watch him toss the scroll into the dying fire. It curls, smokes, disappears. He dusts off his hands. All right, time to rest. You nod, but something tells you another scroll's already on its way. By now, the last embers of the scroll bonfire are fading into gray threads of smoke, curling upward like forgotten words. You drift beside Hermes as he makes his way across the worn flagstones of Olympus's South Terrace. His satchel lighter, but not empty, because it never really is. Some messages linger long after delivery. The night sky above is dimming toward lavender. You catch the outline of stars blinking lazily into place like they're clocking in for night shift. And down below, there's a quiet, real quiet for the first time in days. Hermes stops at a low marble ledge, pulls out what looks like an old biscuit, and breaks it in half. One piece for him, one for a raven perched nearby, who may or may not be a retired prophecy. Want to know something weird? He asks the raven, mouthful. It caws in what you assume is ancient Greek for, do I have a choice? I think they liked it. Hermes says, he's not wrong. The festival was chaotic. Sure, scrolls were misdelivered. Relationships accidentally redefined. Goats were somehow involved in diplomacy, but in the end, the gods laughed. Together, publicly, without lightning bolts. And the symposium, still going. Athena added 3 more panels this morning, including one titled, Logistical Misfires as Catalysts for Pantheon Resilience. He's pretty sure it's just about him. But there's something else, something unfinished. He rifles through the satchel, carefully. Now, no more blind grabs. A scroll falls out, rolls across the marble, and lands at your feet. You hover closer. It's addressed not to a god, but to a mortal, specifically, a scribe in Athens named Lyrios, who once asked the oracle how to live without disappointing anyone ever again. Hermes reads the message aloud. You won't, but you'll live better once you stop pretending that you could. Advice via wrong scroll. Still valid. He rolls it back up, seals it gently. This one will be delivered. Mainstream historical fact. In ancient Athens, it was common to send questions, written ones, to the oracle, carried by appointed messengers. Some of those questions have been found in ruins, scrawled in poetic fragments, still unanswered. Fringe tidbit. One forgotten temple near Delphi claims Hermes himself used to sneak into the oracle's archives and slip in responses of his own, usually humorous, occasionally wise, always anonymous. He slips the scroll into a smaller pouch. That one gets wings. He mutters. The raven cocks its head, then flies off into the sky, scroll clutched in its talons. Hermes watches it go, then pauses, because something is coming back. A scroll, but no bird. Just the scroll itself, spinning gently through the air like a feather made of regrets. It lands softly at his feet. No name, no ribbon, just a familiar scent, jasmine and storm. He opens it slowly. Inside, Dear Hermes, I knew what you were doing. When I got the wrong scroll, I thought finally, someone's breaking the script. I pretended to be mad. That's what's expected. But truth, I needed the wrong message more than the right one. So thank you. Sincerely, the one who got the scroll meant for someone else. He reads it twice, then folds it carefully, presses it to his chest, and says nothing for a long time. You drift around him slowly. Let the air hold steady. Let the silence do the work. He finally exhales. Well, he says, guess I'm not retiring just yet. You chuckle. He's already got a new list in his head. New scrolls to write, messages to deliver, or misdeliver, possibly on purpose. Because sometimes maybe messages mean more when they go the wrong way. Somewhere in the background, a new noise rises. Laughter. The gods again, reunited by something as silly and human as a letter in the wrong hands. And for Hermes, it's a kind of victory. Not carved in stone, but scribbled in haste, smudged by fingers, misread, misunderstood, but felt. The kind of message you keep, even if you never reply. The next morning on Olympus doesn't dawn so much as it stretches. You know that feeling when the sun isn't quite awake and neither are you, but everything glows soft and gold, like someone dimmed the brightness of reality just a little. That's where you are now. You drift alongside Hermes, who's walking the long path between the outer archives and the skyway. an elevated road made entirely of clouds and forgotten promises. The symposium is over. The scroll fire has gone out. The gods have retreated to their realms to pretend they were never vulnerable. But Hermes, he's still carrying the satchel, because someone has to. He pauses near a familiar marble bench, the same one where he sat 3 nights ago, overwhelmed and covered in feather glitter. Now, it's just him and a new scroll in his lap. Not from a god, not from a mortal, but from the satchel itself. Yes, the satchel. It's sentient now. Or maybe it always was. The scroll reads, "Message delivered. Minor system repairs initiated. Chaos at 83%, down from 97%. Would you like to restore previous settings? Yes. No. Add more goats." Hermes chuckles. Add more goats. Obviously, the scroll bursts into confetti. You hover in amused disbelief. Even you weren't expecting self-updating mail accessories. But Hermes isn't surprised. He's lived too long and carried too many regrets to be startled by cheeky accessories anymore. He sits back and opens one of the few remaining undelivered scrolls. It's a long one, heavy, tied with seaweed. You both know what that means. Poseidon. Hermes sighs and unrolls it carefully. Inside, Hermes, you returned my wave generator scroll, then replaced it with a dessert recipe, which was actually fantastic. The sponge held up under pressure, unlike your timeline. Therefore, I suggest a quarterly cooking and catastrophes newsletter. We'll alternate columns. You bring the stories, I bring the salt. P.L. The goat truffle survived the whirlpool. Impressive. Hermes grins. Poseidon, you passive-aggressive tsunami. You, mainstream historical fact. In ancient coastal regions of Greece, Poseidon was often honored not just for his seafaring might, but also for protecting fishermen's catches, including those used in sacred meals. There are temple offerings that were basically fish-based potlucks. Fringe tidbit. One obscure hymn from the island of Samos praises Poseidon as master of brine and bread, hinting at an older version of the god who might have dabbled in culinary arts, possibly with tridents used as skewers. Hermes pulls out another scroll. This one's unlabeled. He opens it with care. Inside, a single gold thread sentence. "Thank you for confusing me. It made me think." He turns it over. Blank, but the paper smells like cinnamon and ash. Artemis, you float in silence beside him, feeling the weight of these not quite apologies, not quite thank yous. The middle ground of divine communication, where pride and grace overlap in a very passive-aggressive Venn diagram. Hermes lets the scrolls fall gently into a side pouch labeled emotional debris. Then he stands, and suddenly, he runs. Wings flutter, ankles spark. The air around him picks up speed, because no matter how heavy the message is, Hermes always moves like he's late even when he's not. You soar after him, trying to keep up, as he sprints through the skyway, past the Court of Echoes and the Boredom Pavilion. It's just a bench and 2 gods playing eternal chess. He turns sharply left at the column of overthinking, right at the shrine of unread prayers. And finally, he stops before a very, very small temple, barely a ruin, really, made of brick and hope. He kneels and pulls out a scroll unlike the others. Old, wrapped in twine, stained with wine and time. To Jerry, it says, you gasp, the scroll, the mythical scroll, the one from the beginning. The one that somehow keeps coming back, undelivered, unclaimed, always rerouted, always almost received. He holds it in both hands. This time, he says, we do it properly. He opens the door to the shrine and places the scroll on a stone altar. A faint breeze stirs. The scroll vanishes. In its place, a note. Message received. Took you long enough. Thanks for the stories. Jerry definitely real. Hermes stares, then bursts out laughing. You join him, floating higher now, lighter than before. Because sometimes, the best messages aren't prophecies or ultimatums. They're jokes, left in shrines no one visits, for people we're not even sure exist. And yet, somehow, they answer back. You glide above Hermes as he walks back from Jerry's shrine, the weight in his satchel finally miraculously balanced. Not gone, but no longer pulling him sideways. For the first time in many scroll-filled nights, there's nothing urgent flapping at his elbow. No gods yelling. No pastries possessed by unintended meanings. No symposiums erupting into goat-led panel discussions. Just the quiet. The kind of quiet that smells like olive trees in bloom and warm scroll wax cooling on marble. Hermes stops at the edge of a bluff that overlooks the mortal world. Below, cities glow like fireflies. The Aegean sparkles. You can see boats, prayers, and lost hopes floating toward him like letters without return addresses. He reaches into the satchel one last time and pulls out nothing. He blinks, checks again, still empty. Then, slowly, from inside the lining of the bag, hidden in a space just between time and sentiment, emerges a folded parchment, faintly glowing. He didn't put it there. No one did. It unfolds itself in the wind, and it reads, to Hermes, "You've done enough. You've outrun complaints, outwritten apologies, outjoked gods who never laugh. You turned chaos into community. So here's your last message. Sit, breathe. For once, let the letters arrive without chasing them. The world will still whisper, just not all at once." Signed, a friend with good timing. Hermes stares at it, lips parted. You feel something loosen in the air around him, something taut, finally slackening. He folds the message, no fire this time, just a pocket, right next to the one labeled, "For later regret." Mainstream historical fact. In some early fragments of the Homeric hymns, Hermes is described not just as a trickster and thief, but as the one who brings rest to the souls he escorts, the silent companion of the weary. Fringe tidbit. There's a lost tablet from Eleusis depicting Hermes napping while scrolls orbit his head like confused birds. Some scholars believe it was a satire. Others say it was aspirational art, a dream of what rest could look like, even for the most restless god. Hermes now walks back through Olympus, not sprinting, not dodging, but casually. Peers wave. Minor gods nod. One cyclops hands him a cheese wheel without comment. And then he hears it. Soft music. A beat, and a voice Apollo's projecting far too confidently across the open-air theater, and now presenting the closing number from my new musical, inspired by a week of scroll-fueled divine therapy. Hermes's eyes go wide. Oh no, 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 no. You drift above the audience gathering on cushions, clouds, and chariots. They've come back. All of them. Gods, nymphs, dryads, possibly an intern from the Fates. Ares has popcorn. Aphrodite's holding up scorecards. Athena's making notes. Apollo appears center stage, arms wide, lyre glowing. And the curtain rises. The backdrop. A giant paper scroll with Hermes's face on it, stylized, smiling, panicked. You watch in helpless amazement as the chorus begins. Oh, scrolls of sorrow, scrolls of shame, delivered wrong, but lit aflame. Through thunder, sighs, and pastry screams, you bound the gods in awkward dreams. Hermes turns slowly toward you. I'm never delivering anything again. He whispers. You float, shrugging, because it's catchy. The chorus sways dramatically as Apollo continues, now perched atop a mailbox-shaped podium. Behind him, a backup choir of muses dramatically reenacts key events. The pie duel, the symposium dance-off, the goat being knighted. A curtain pulls back to reveal Dionysus, in a toga made of scrolls, doing interpretive dance. Poseidon plays a xylophone made of dry fish bones. And Hera, she's in the back row, tapping her foot, smiling, genuinely smiling. The music builds. So raise a toast to that winged guy, who didn't plan but still got by, who gave us chaos, flair, and found connection midair. Hermes exhales. Okay, maybe just one more delivery. You grin. He steps into the spotlight, unsummoned. The crowd cheers. He bows. And for the first time, he delivers nothing. Just presence. Just a grin. Just the quiet pride of a job done wrong and somehow, wonderfully, right. You hover above the stage as the final notes of Apollo's song spiral up into the stars, dissolving into a shimmer of harp strings, laughter, and faint goat bleats. No one knows why those keep happening, but at this point, it's tradition. Hermes remains in the spotlight, arms half raised, caught between applause and disbelief. Around him, Olympus glows, not with thunder or fire, but with something warmer, softer, like divine embarrassment mixed with unexpected fondness. The crowd starts to rise, not to leave, but to join him, one by one. The gods climb the steps to the stage. Athena offers him a tiny scroll that simply says, "Fine work, but never do it again." Ares claps him so hard on the back, he nearly drops his sandals. Dionysus hands him a drink called Oops. No explanation. Even Hades appears in the wings, offering a thumb up and a discreet shrug that probably means, "You didn't ruin everything. Congratulations." Hermes grins, a little sheepish, a little amazed. He raises both hands like a conductor and bows. And then, slowly, almost reverently, he takes off his satchel. It flutters gently as he hangs it on a golden hook near the edge of the stage. The moment is quiet, almost ceremonial. He steps back and lets it go, because the night is winding down. Not in a hurry, not in a crash, but in a long, slow breath, the kind the gods rarely allow themselves to take. You drift away from the crowd, floating higher into the open Olympus air. Below, the divine city settles into a post-festival glow. Scroll ashes rise into the sky like fireflies. The stars blink contentedly. Even the satchel, hanging still on its hook, seems at peace. You return to Hermes, now seated on the marble steps of the theater, legs dangling over the side like a kid on the edge of a mortal balcony. He looks out toward the horizon, where the mortal world still flickers. "Guess they'll still be sending prayers tomorrow," he murmurs. You nod. Because they will. Prayers, questions, regrets, the occasional oddly specific wish involving goats and romance. Hermes leans back, arms behind his head. "I won't mess them up," he says, then pauses. "Okay, I probably won't mess them up." Another pause. "Okay, maybe a few, but this time, on purpose." And there it is again, that spark. That sly, smiling sliver of chaos that makes him who he is. Not the god of perfection, not the god of order, just the one who moves, delivers, fumbles, connects. You float beside him, letting the silence settle like soft parchment around you. Somewhere far below, a mortal lights a lantern and releases it into the night. Somewhere else, an unanswered letter finds its way into a breeze. The world continues. And for once, so does its laughter. Now everything slows. The music fades. The stars stop blinking so loudly. And even the gods, ever dramatic and volatile, begin to doze behind half-closed temple doors. You find yourself drifting quieter now through the streets of Olympus, empty scrolls fluttering gently in warm air. The festival is over, but the stories remain, half-finished, half-remembered, whole in a way only mistakes can be. And Hermes, he's still there, leaning back, watching the sky write itself with tiny streaks of glowing ink. He isn't running, isn't delivering. He's just still. Let yourself float with him a while longer. Let your breathing match the rise and fall of Olympus asleep. Because tonight wasn't about getting it right. It was about what happens after. After the apology, after the mess, after the laughter. It was about that strange moment when everyone stops pretending to be invincible and simply listens, even if the message wasn't meant for them. Even if the scroll was delivered to the wrong hand at exactly the right time. So now, slowly, you can let go of the noise, of the scrolls, of the expectations you didn't know you were carrying. You made it. The letters are burned. The gods are sleeping. And you're allowed to rest. Sweet dreams.